Hey everybody, welcome back. Last time we started going over the modeling toolkit. This time we will continue to go over the modeling toolkit. Let's go ahead and generate a sphere. And last time we went over the combine, separate, boolean, and smooth tools. This time we're going to move down into our components here, and we're going to start with extrude. So in order to properly work with this, of course, we have to go into face selection mode. I'm going to select a face, it doesn't really matter which one. And I'm going to select extrude. Allows me to pull the face out and add more geometry. I have options here to add divisions to add even more geometry. Offsetting. Thickness. Translation. Let's undo. There's other ways of getting to the extrude tool, of course. We can go up into edit mesh. Extrude should be right here. You'll notice that extrude has a shortcut, Control E. Let's select another face. I'm going to press Control E on my keyboard, and there we go. Automatically, I can just start extruding. Fantastic. Again, this is a method of adding more geometry and creating fun new shape. Let's do it again. This time I'm going to select multiple faces. Maybe I'll select one of these as well, and that. And this time I'll press Control E. I can extrude, adding some divisions to add more geometry for some weird shapes. Something else to note about the extrude tool, you will notice this right here. Let's go ahead and select another face so we can demonstrate this properly. I'll select this face right here and Control E. Right now, I am extruding via the normal. That's what it's called when you're extruding like this. If I were to select this, my three arrows representing the three axes that I can move this from now look like the regular move tool as opposed to being rotated and placed in such a way that it makes more sense for that particular face. The extrude tool will automatically extrude via the normal, which is the most common way of extruding something, but you can also extrude via the world by just selecting this. The move tool will change here, and we can manipulate it as such. Let's undo. Let's compare and contrast. So here's extruding via the normal. Extrudes out in the direction and shape that you would expect versus the world. It extrudes out. We have a little indent there because of how the sphere is, how the sphere was made, how the sphere is made, and how its polys are all laid out. It's a good idea to switch back and forth between both if you want to get some weird looking shapes. You'll notice that not only can we push things out via the extrude tool, but we can also scale with the extrude tool. We can also rotate with the extrude tool. But most of the time, you're probably just going to be using the move tool whenever you use extrude. So most of the time, you're just going to select the face, Control E, and via the normal, you're just going to extrude out. Again, that's via the normal. And via the world, we get something very different. Depending on your needs, you may want to extrude via the normal or via the world. Though most of the time, it'll probably be via the normal. Let's create a second sphere now. Going to move this one over. Now I am going to go into my front orthographic view. I'm going to select multiple faces at once because we can extrude multiple faces at once, as you can imagine. Again, Control E to get to the extrude tool. Push it out. Fantastic. I can do it via the world if I wanted to create some more shapes there, add in some divisions for geometry. Good. Let's make another sphere, because now I want to show what happens if we decide we switch off keep faces together. This is one of the options that you have whenever you use the extrude tool. If you turn off keep faces together, everything will be extruded as its own. Not only can we push faces out, let's just select a few from here. Not only can we push faces out, we can push faces in as well. Already, with the extrude tool, we can start making some very, very interesting modeling decisions. So not only can you use extrude with faces, as seen here, Control E, like this. Not only can you use the extrude tool with faces, you can also use it with edges. So let's go to edge mode, and we'll just select a few edges, 3, 4, and Control E. We'll bring these out. Now, you don't want to do this typically, extruding with edges. It looks okay from this angle, but you can actually see, if we turn around, that we have these sides that are completely dark. That's because all geometry, not most geometry, but all geometry that you work with in Maya has something called normals. And normals only face in one direction. Typically, you'll know that an asset is facing the right direction if it is colored the base, if it's colored in its base material. So I'm actually going to assign a new material for this, just so we can make it more obvious what's going on here. And we're going to go back to our modeling toolkit, and let's see what's going on here. So we have the side that's colored, and then we have the side that's completely dark. That's because this dark side is the side that typically is supposed to face away from any camera in the scene or a player in the scene. This is the side you're generally not supposed to see. And if you're seeing this, it's because geometry that is facing the wrong direction or only has one direction to face is in play, which typically you don't want. You can see every single object that we work with has a side that has a color. Like let's look at the sphere, for example. The sphere has color on one side, this green, but it also, if you go in, has this is fully dark in here, which is okay, because that's the side that's the part that no one's ever going to see. That's the side that has no that doesn't really have a material, which is, it's fine. That is intended. But whenever you extrude just edges, then suddenly you have situations where the side that you're not supposed to see will pop out and can mess with your work. So typically, when we extrude, we don't just extrude edges, unless, of course, you are extruding around a hole in the in your asset. So in this case, I'll delete this right here, and I will just double click to grab this edge loop, and I'll press Control E again. Typically, that is how you will actually use extrude edges as compared to extrude faces. You don't want to just grab some random edges and bring them up. That will make it more likely that geometry, that the sides of geometry you're not supposed to see will be facing out for you to see. Typically, you want to use extrude edges around holes in your model. A quick note, you can also extrude vertices. Normally, you wouldn't, but you can. Like I said, extrude works best with faces, but you can extrude vertices as well. You can extrude vertices as seen here. We don't actually have to pull it out ourselves. It will extrude by itself. We can play with the length, the divisions for geometry, and the width if we want to. We can see how that adds in more geometry every time we extrude out. Now that I have all these faces selected, I'm going to go to select, convert selection, convert all that to vertices, as shown a couple of videos ago, and now I'm going to extrude all these vertices. And you get something very interesting. All right, let's go ahead and delete all this extrude work that I did here. Let's just double click the cube. And let's go to Edit, Reset the Settings. Again, something you want to do usually when you're trying to work with tools. I'll get rid of that sphere. I have my cube. My cube has now the regular default, which is fine. All I did for that, again, is just double click it to go into my options. And I just went into Edit, Reset the Settings. You can do that with practically anything that you have here as in the toolbox as well as here in your shelf. You can also do it here in the settings for these particular primitives. So cube, default primitive settings, I'll create it. Next thing I want to show off is the bevel. The bevel is right here, right next to the extrude. Let's just go ahead, we have the cube selected, let's select the bevel. The bevel is going to affect every single edge of your selected object. We can change segments, that's the main thing you'll want to change. 3 is usually a good number to have, but you can make it higher if you want, though again, beware that that will add a lot more geometry. Fraction for the size. Depth if you want the bevel to go in or out. By default, it's going to be at 1, but you can get it up to -1 so that the bevel goes in if you want it to, as you can see. Very, very useful. Let's undo that bevel, actually. There we go. And this time, instead of just having the whole cube selected, let's go into component mode. We'll have edges selected. Just as it's better to work in face mode with the extrude tool, you can do this with the face tool and the vertice tool if you want to, but bevel really works best with the edge tool. So I'm going to select just 2 edges here, and I'll select bevel, and now it's only going to affect those 2 edges. Let's undo. This time I'll have just 1 edge selected. Let's add in a cone and do the same thing with the cone. There we go. Bevel is an easy way of adding some detail into your models without having to do all that much. And it's a great way of it's a great way of softening edges. You can look at anything that you have near you, whether it is the corner, even the sharp things like corners of tables or the corner of your computer or laptop monitor. Almost everything that exists is going to have a bevel of some sort in it, some sort of a curve going along the edge, even the things that are sharp. So if you want to add in extra detail to your models, beveling is a good idea because most everything has it. It's very easy to add, as we just went over. Let's actually use it on something more involved. And already this table looks a little bit more detailed and a little nicer just by including bevels. As you can see, even the sharp table legs have been softened a little bit and look just a little bit nicer from a distance when you have bevels. Very quick note, I just want to make something more clear about the bevel tool. It is best to use segments of 2, 4, or 6. You want even numbers, essentially. You don't want to go too high or else you can risk causing some issues. But 2, 4, or 6 is the best way of creating some beveling. Bevels can be found in Edit Mesh Bevel, and there is a shortcut for it, Control B, so I can just select an edge. Control B, and there is our bevel. Or I can just select a whole object, Control B, and the whole object will be beveled. Again, segments of 2, 4, or 6 are best for this. 3 is also okay, but 2, 4, or 6. You want even numbers. In future videos, we are going to discuss edge loops and how we can circumvent potential issues from having faces that are more than 4 sides. In this case, it doesn't really matter, but in the future, we're going to be confronted with faces that have more than 4 sides. We will be discussing edge loops, retopology, and ways to circumvent issues that come from having faces that are more than 4 sides. A second quick note about beveling. I've gone back to the table and chair scene from week 3. I'm going to go ahead and hide the chairs real quick. My second note is related to the complexity of certain geometry. You don't want to just select entire objects and bevel if they have more complicated geometry, like so, because that's just going to add unnecessary geometry all over the place and potentially make it more difficult to UV unwrap later down the line, or to make edits to later down the line, or will potentially just slow down and crash your computer depending on how complex your geometry is. So I'm going to undo this. In a situation like this table, what I would really do normally is just select each piece and then just select the edges that I would want to bevel one at a time. So in this case with this table, I don't need these edges to do anything in regards to beveling, so it's pointless to have those selected. It's pointless to select these ones as well, because these ones aren't going to be doing anything. It's just the actual corners themselves, whether it's the top and bottom and the actual corners here, that I want to make sure get beveled and nothing else. This is just a way of ensuring cleaner topology and less unnecessary geometry that you may have to later delete and deal with moving down the line, especially if you're intending to like UV unwrap something like this. We'll do it again with the bottom part. And for the legs, since this has so little geometry and every single edge here needs to be beveled, for the legs, it's okay to just select everything and then just bevel it completely. And voila, this is how I would bevel normally, not just selecting everything because that would create too much unnecessary geometry, just carefully selecting the edges that you would want beveled, the edges that make the most sense to bevel, not every single edge, and not every single edge that the model may have. Just picking and choosing the ones that you absolutely need bevels for is the best way to ensure cleaner topology. The next tool I want to show here, we went over extrude, we went over bevel. Let's go to bridge now. To do that, let's go ahead and create a couple of planes. And in order to demonstrate how this works, bridge will only work on combined meshes. So it will only work on something that is already fully unified mesh or on meshes that are already combined. So in this case, I'm going to combine both of these in order to make proper use of bridge. So we're going to combine from the previous video. And now we can use bridge. The way bridge works is all you have to do is go into edge select, select a couple of edges here, and then you select bridge, and it will automatically connect them by creating additional geometry to connect the gap in between the edges. You can select multiple edges at once. It will bridge it all intelligently by creating the geometry as you'd expect it to. Perfect. Bridge does not work if there are no holes in your geometry. So I can press bridge right now, nothing is going to happen, as you can see, because there are no holes in my geometry. Bridge is another form of an older Maya tool. Bridge is a much better form of an old Maya tool, honestly. Bridge is a better form of mesh tools append to polygon tool. This is the old way of having to connect having to connect gaps in your models, wherein you select one, select the other, press G to repeat the action, and do it again. You can only do it one at a time with appended polygon. It's it's much more limited in scope that way, and it's much easier to accidentally mess up, as you can see, and create geometry that you don't want to create. So I press G to redo my action, then Control Z to undo that, and then try again. Appended polygon is the other way of doing this, but it is a much weaker way compared to bridge. So let's see. Fast way of doing this would be to go to top view. I'm going to select all the vertices here. I'm going to convert the selection into edges. I'm going to hold Control to deselect these edges, so I only have the edges that are across the gap from each other, and now I'm just going to press bridge real quick and connect them all at the same time. I can add in divisions if I want to. I can add a taper if I want to. It's not going to matter here for the plane, but it will for future. I can add a twist if I wanted to. That'll matter more. That'll matter more when I demonstrate with other shapes in just a moment. Bridge is very good, very powerful. It's a good way of it's a good way of working and a good way of combining. It's not a good way of combining. It's a good way of connecting objects together after you've combined them. So let's actually continue on adding this cube now. With this cube, I'm going to make it no, not 23. Whoops. 2 by 2 by 2. That's better. Whenever you're using bridge, you want to make sure you are lining up faces and vertices just right between objects, or else it's not going to work that well. I have a lot of history here, so I'm going to go ahead and edit delete by type history to get rid of all that. So that way, whenever I do future actions, it's not going to create some new things that I can't possibly predict or have to deal with. It will just react as I want it to react normally. Now I'm going to take these two. I am going to go to my modeling toolkit. I'm going to combine them. I'm going to delete by type the history just so that nothing weird happens. Now I'm going to go into face selection, delete the faces here. Find my cube, which I believe is right there, yes. Delete the faces right below it. Should be those four. Perfect. Now I'm going to grab both edge loops, this bottom one for the cube, this one for the plane, bridge, add in some divisions maybe. Maybe now we can add in some twist. We can see now we can add in some twist and something will happen there. We don't just have to limit ourselves to cubes and planes though. We can also add in and connect other stuff like this torus. As long as we have the same amount of sides. Bridges will only work if you have the same amount of sides from one end of the bridge to the other end of the bridge. So in this case, I have 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. So eight sides total here, 8 edges total here, and 8 edges total down here, which is why the bridge worked perfectly. If you have one end of your potential bridge that has 6 sides and the other end that only has 8 sides, it will not work. So bridges, you have to be absolutely careful when you're setting them up that both ends of your potential bridge are going to have the exact same amount of sides. So now I'm going to go ahead and add in a cylinder. And there we go. A couple of minutes later, just added in a second torus, second cylinder. For this one, I didn't create a cube. I just extruded some faces up and created a very basic rudimentary pipe system that I could then maybe smooth to have it look a little bit nicer. Let's go ahead and delete this. The last thing I want to show you is, let's make 2 cubes. Let's bring back the grid, default view. I'm going to make 2 cubes here. And the previous video, I already demonstrated what the smooth tool does and how it works. And the fact that this basic cube with the very basic geometry that it has, once it's smooth, it will soften all the edges and make it essentially into a sphere. But the more geometry you had on the cube, smoothing a version of the cube with a lot of geometry will ensure that the edges are softened, but that the shape is retained, as we can see. That's one method of doing it. The last of the tools we're going to be using here under components is add divisions. Add divisions is another version of smooth, but instead of softening edges, all it does is add geometry. This is yet another way you can add geometry. Again, Maya presents lots of different ways of doing the same thing. So we could just add geometry via the add divisions tool, or we could just add the geometry in ourselves before we actually spawn in the cube. We can also create another cube and play around with the geometry from here. There are lots of different ways of doing the exact same thing in Maya. Add divisions is yet just another way of adding in geometry to your primitives and into any model, really. Here we have a cone, add divisions. It's just another way of adding in geometry. So that's everything that I wanted to cover in the components section of the modeling toolkit. Next time, we're going to go down into the actual tools here. We're going to be talking about multi-cut, target weld, connect. A very quick additional note about smoothing. I'm going to go ahead and just generate a cube real quick here. You don't have to commit to a smooth, which of course adds a whole bunch of geometry to your object. You can smooth preview by pressing 3 on your keyboard, and that will give you a preview of what your smooth will look like. And then you can go back to the unsmooth preview by pressing 1 on your keyboard. Note, this is just a preview, so if you were to smooth preview an object that you intended to have rendered and rendered it out, the object itself would not be smoothed in the render because this is just a preview of what the object looks like when it is smoothed. You can already go ahead and smooth an object. And if you smooth preview this object, it will give you a preview of what the smoothed object will look like even smoother. At this point, because we've already smoothed it a couple of times, it will now show up smooth in the render as well. And remember, just press 1 to go back to unsmoothed view. Alright, that was just a quick note about smoothing and the fact that you can smooth preview. That's the real end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.